today we're going to talk about two 7-inch singles from the Sex Pistols performed by Mr. Sid Vicious. This one and this one. Hello there. Thank you for coming back to Rockin' Retro Record Reviews. And if this is your first time here, please give me a like, give me a subscribe, all those things which will cost you nothing, but will help me out massively. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Today, we're here to talk about the Sex Pistols, and in particular, a couple of Sex Pistols 7-inch singles, one there and one there. These were both originally Eddie Cochran songs. Eddie recorded these, in the case of Come On Everybody, back in 1958, and Somethin Else was done in 1959. So even though at the time, back in the late 70s, it seemed like an absolute age between these songs, it's about 20 years, which now that we're all older doesn't seem quite so far away, does it? I think the Pistols made some good decisions by picking these songs. They picked these two and Sid sang them, and also he did a cover version of My Way as well, but that's a Sinatra song, not an Eddie Cochran song, which makes it less cool in my opinion, so we're not going to talk about that one. But before we get down to business, my glamorous assistant, who will be wearing a different coloured shirt to me, is going to tell you about the actual records themselves. Here we've got the 7-inch version of Something Else, which has come from my Pistols pack, because I cannot find my original 7-inch version of this song, and that makes me so sad. It's been put away somewhere safe. It'll turn up, but I just don't know where it is. And on the B-side of this one, rather than having Friggin' in the Riggin', which you got on the original, we have Silly Thing by Paul and Steve. And it's a good version as well. Well worth a listen to that. Well worth a listen. Let's take a look at the record itself. Please don't shout at me for touching the records. I know it freaks people out when you touch records, but I'm doing my best not to, okay? There we go. So, Something Else, vocals by Mr. Sid Vicious himself, and it's produced by Steve Jones. Not bad, eh? And on the flip side, Silly Thing. There we go. I'll put that down there carefully, or as carefully as I can, while we move on to Come On Everybody. Now this one again has come from my Pistols pack, although I do have over here my original version. I will look at that in a second. And rather than having what's on the B-side of the original, here we have the great Rock and Roll Swindle. Hey, look, it's here as well. Let's take a look at the record again. Okay. There you go. Nice brown label on this version. Once again, vocals by Mr. Sid Vicious. And that's produced by Paul Cook and Steve Jones, amazingly. Team effort. And there we go. There's the B-side for you. Let's put that down carefully as well. And take a look at the original one. I really wish I could find my original Something Else. That's quite distressing. I've moved house recently and you know how it goes. So here we go. On the B-side of this one, we get the God Save the Queen Symphony, which is terrible. It's really just Malcolm banging onto himself in Malcolm's typical kind of style. But it also gives us a great cover of What You Gonna Do About It. And that's pretty good. I'd say that's well worth listening to. There we go. Sorry. Did you see him? Was he wearing a different shirt? That just goes to prove that I've got an assistant, because it couldn't have been me, otherwise that would be a terrible continuity error, wouldn't it? So, what do we remember about these records? How do they make us feel all these years later? Because it is a long time ago now, isn't it? For me, they were the first time I heard this kind of music. They were the first time I heard something that made me feel special, that I could do it, that I could be part of it. And I didn't realise at the time that these weren't original songs. It was only when I got my versions of them, I looked on the back and saw the names on the records and thought, who are these people? Then I realised they were covers and that they were by Eddie Cochran. So I kind of asked around, I did all the usual research that you had to do back in those days. Go to your record shop, ask old people like your parents. And I found out a little bit more about Eddie. And I discovered that he was pretty cool. In fact, he was more than pretty cool, he was very cool. He was the original rock and roller. And I think that the fact that the Pistols took his records so seriously when they did their covers of them for this film and this record here says quite a lot, because other stuff they did, they took the mickey out of a fair bit. You know, they did a version of Rock Around the Clock, which is quite comical. But when it came to these versions, I think they were treated with some respect. And I'd like to think the reason for that is because the guys loved it and they appreciated just how good it was. They didn't take the mickey out of the songs. They played them pretty much straight, but just with their own spin. They played them a little bit harder, a little bit more edge to them. And the musicianship on these records, I think, is also really good, you know? Punk and the Pistols in particular came in for a lot of stick. But as a musician myself, I can tell you that stuff is played pretty well. It's played to a high standard. These boys knew what they were doing. And when the Pistols came along in the kind of, you know, mid to late 70s, 76, 77, whenever you want to believe the year was, they made us all think, what's this? It made everybody stand up. It gave music a kick up the backside. And although you could argue that the Pistols aren't real punk, in inverted commas, it's the stuff that turned a lot of us onto punk, isn't it? And it led people like me from punk into other genres of music as well. And without the Pistols, where would I be? You know, I wouldn't have made a living out of playing one of these things or from singing in bands over the years. And that would be a sad thing, wouldn't it? At least for me, it would anyway. Now, Sid came in for quite a lot of stick, being a bit of a nasty guy, you know, with his life, with his drugs and his drink, and his ending, which we won't go into here. But I don't think he was all that bad. He was in his, you know, his late teens when all this stuff was going on. And who amongst us knows what we're doing when we're 19 years old, right? And we're given the key to the golden crapper and told, knock yourself out, son. I don't think Sid was like that. I think Sid was an okay kind of guy. One of my favourite stories about Sid comes from Chalky Davies, who was a photographer. And he spent a lot of time with Philip Lynott, excuse me. And one of the stories that he tells about Sid and Nancy is that they'd come round to Philip's house in London when there'd be all these wild parties going on with lots of famous rock stars there. Things would get a bit hectic, a bit out of control, you know, drink and all manner of craziness going on till the early hours of the morning. And they'd all go to bed after these parties and wake up the next day at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon with raging hangovers, expecting the house to be in bits when they came downstairs. But it never was, apparently. Whenever Sid and Nancy were there, they'd come downstairs in the morning and Sid and Nancy would have tidied everything up, cleaned up, washed all the pots, and just have gone to bed nice and quietly. And I think that says quite a lot about Sid. I think that kind of shows his true character when he wasn't being a stage persona and he wasn't being the guy that everybody wanted him to be. I think that's a nice story. That's how I'd like to remember Sid. The other thing that I remember about these songs is the videos to them, because back in the late 70s, videos were quite a new thing. And on Top of the Pops, generally speaking, if they couldn't get the artiste to perform, they'd have a dance group, maybe Pan's People or Hot Gossip, dancing to the song really badly, and it never fit. But then videos came along, and I remember both the videos for Come On Everybody and Something Else. On Come On Everybody, Sid was riding around, or pretending to ride around. I'm pretty sure he was being towed around on a trailer on a motorbike. And at the time, I thought it was a Triumph, maybe a Bonneville, but no. Time has told me that that was in fact a Honda CB350, which is a cool bike. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. In fact, it's a very, very cool bike, a very cool bike. And also, on Something Else, the video kind of revolved around Sid, Sid getting out of bed in some very small underpants, going to his fridge, getting some bottles of beer out and throwing the beer all around, you know. Yeah, I guess that was Sid's stage persona, you know. I remember that very well. But something else that shocked me when I did some research, Eddie Cochran, the writer of these songs, died when he was just 21 years old. There was a car crash in Bath when he was 21 years old, and he died in that. And Sid also died at the age of 21. How crazy is that? What a remarkable coincidence, eh? So there we go. If there are any records that you think we should be talking about on here, anything that's changed your life that you think other people should know about, let me know down in the comments. And if I can get myself a copy of it as well, we'll do that. We'll share the word and we'll encourage everybody to listen to more records. Thank you for coming. Stay safe and I'll see you next time. Cheers.